The Nonduality of Alan Watts. Alan Watts was a British-American philosopher, writer, and engaging speaker. He played a significant role in popularizing Eastern philosophy and spirituality in the Western world during the 20th century. He was born in England in 1915 and showed an early interest in Buddhism and other Eastern philosophies. In 1932, at the age of 17, Watts moved to the United States to study theology at Seabury Western Theological Seminary in Illinois. He was ordained as an Episcopal priest in 1945 but left the church a few years later. He became interested in the teachings of Zen Buddhism and Taoism and began studying and writing about Eastern philosophy and spirituality. He taught at the American Academy of Asian Studies in San Francisco from 1951 to 1957, and wrote over 25 influential books, including The Way of Zen and the book, On the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are. In the 1960s, Watts became a popular speaker on college campuses and at conferences. And his lectures were often recorded and broadcast on radio and television. He was known for his engaging and accessible style, his wit and humor, and his ability to make complex Eastern philosophical concepts relatable to Western audiences. Watts continued to write and lecture until his death in 1973 at the age of 58. His legacy as a pioneer of the East-West dialogue and a popularizer of Eastern philosophy and spirituality continues to influence contemporary spiritual and philosophical thought. Most people don't realize that his ideas often mirrored the concepts of non-duality, which is a central tenet in many Eastern philosophical and spiritual traditions. Non-duality is the idea that everything in the universe is ultimately interconnected and that there is no fundamental separation between the self and the world. This concept is often associated with Advaita Vedanta, a Hindu philosophical tradition, and is also found in other Eastern traditions like Buddhism and Taoism. Watts spoke about the interconnectedness of all things and the illusion of a separate self. In his book The Book, On the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, he wrote, "We are living in a culture entirely hypnotized by the illusion of time, in which the so-called present moment is felt as nothing but an infinitesimal hairline between an all-powerfully causative past and an absorbingly important future. We have no present. Our consciousness is almost completely preoccupied with memory and expectation. We do not realize that there never was, is, nor will be any other experience than present experience. We are therefore out of touch with reality." In non-dualist literature, the idea of life being like a game is often associated with the concept of Lila, which is Sanskrit for divine play. This concept is found in many Hindu and Buddhist texts. One prominent example is the Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, which describes life as a game played by the divine Krishna, with human beings as the players. In this view, life is not taken too seriously and is seen as a temporary experience that is meant to be enjoyed. Watts too loved the concept of life being a game and said, "God likes to play hide and seek, but because there is nothing outside of God, he has no one but himself to play with. But he gets over this difficulty by pretending that he is not himself. This is his way of hiding from himself. He pretends that he is you and I and all the people in the world, all the animals, plants, all the rocks, and all the stars. In this way he has strange and wonderful adventures, some of which are terrible and frightening. But these are just like bad dreams, for when he wakes up they will disappear." Watts' ideas also reflected the concept of emptiness or voidness, a tenet of non-dualism, and found in Buddhist philosophy and the Taoist notion of Wu. In his own words, Watts says, "Nothingness is really like the nothingness of space, which contains the whole universe. All the sun and the stars and the mountains, and rivers, and the good men and bad men, and the animals, and insects, and the whole bit. All are contained in void. So out of this void comes everything and you are it." What else could you be? As with non-duality, Watts often spoke about the ego as an illusion, and the importance of transcending the ego to experience a sense of unity with the universe. To sum up, Watts' emphasis on the interconnectedness of all things, life as a game, everything emerging and returning to the void, and the illusion of the ego, reflect the central tenets of non-dual philosophy. Finally, Watts believed the past and future aren't real, and the only truth is in the present moment. In his own words, Watts said, "And become what you are." Life exists only at this very moment, and in this moment it is infinite and eternal. For the present moment is infinitely small. Before we can measure it, it has gone, and yet it persists forever. Thanks for watching.